Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on behalf of a special partnership with Alaska Public Media. It is Tuesday, December 20th, 2022, and we're less than 24 hours away now from the winter solstice. And in other news going on across the lower 48, if you want additional weather information on top of what I provide, you can go to weather.gov. It'll bring you up to this map of the continental U.S. with Alaska and Hawaii to the lower left. It's a point-and-click interactive map, so when you place your mouse there and click, you get the latest weather information, including watches, warnings, and advisories for anywhere in the country. Quick glance of this map. Of most noteworthy thing I can see, there are winter storm warnings, even blizzard warnings there in Minnesota, Iowa, western Wisconsin, winter storm watches, Illinois, Indiana, western and northern lower Michigan, the upper peninsula. There's going to be a major area of low pressure that develops and produces blizzard conditions Thursday into Friday across areas of the western and southwestern Great Lakes. It's going to be a significant storm right before the Christmas holiday. It'll impact major cities like Chicago and travel throughout that area of the western lakes. But here closer to home, we have a different sort of culprit for winter weather, a large Arctic high pressure system centered over northwest Canada with a central pressure upper around in just over 1060 millibars, producing some very cold temperatures across the eastern and southeast interior. The Cooperative Observer at Chicken this morning recorded 62 below zero. Fort Yukon Airport, 53 below, and of note, potential record there at Kenai in the northwest Kenai Peninsula along Cook Inlet, 31 below. And the cold temperatures are going to persist. We are expecting a system out right now in the Aleutians is producing heavy rain and high winds. Flood warnings have been issued, even some reports of debris flow or some minor landslides around Unalaska, and that warning will continue because Unalaska Dutch Harbor area has picked up, pushing now about 3.5 inches of rainfall, with another 3 to 5 on the way tonight into tomorrow. Also, we are expecting the potential for a major winter storm to produce heavy snow and high winds just before Christmas there in the Panhandle, beginning latter half of Thursday afternoon, evening, the start, and then expanding through Friday and Saturday, and some of the snow amounts could potentially be quite significant. But here, one other item. We mentioned winter solstice is upon us. It'll occur Wednesday, shortly afternoon at 12:48 p.m. Alaska Standard Time, and we will just begin to slowly come back into the light. It'll take a little while, but at least we know we've reached that midpoint, astronomically speaking. And looking at some of the webcams, Chicken this morning, 62 below, Knob Ridge out there in the east central areas. You can see that just the low light and cold air settled in the valley. Soldotna, which is near Kenai getting down to 31 below this morning. You can see a sliver of a waning crescent moon in the sky there yet early this afternoon. And then Dutch Harbor, wind and heavy rain, 45 degrees, and as I mentioned, a flood warning in effect for the eastern Aleutians, where an additional 3 to 5 inches of rain could come, producing perhaps some additional reports of some debris flows or landslides. Juneau right now, broken cloud cover, 12 degrees. Areas of the Panhandle this afternoon have failed to get out of the single digits above zero, including Haines, Skagway, and Petersburg. And here are the current advisories. We have wind chill advisories in around Fairbanks, Tanana, up toward Bettles. Not to be unexpected, given those cold interior temperatures. A winter weather advisory remains in effect through Wednesday morning down there in Yakutat area. And then the area highlighted in blue is just the special weather statement for the pending winter storm that'll impact the Panhandle here before Christmas. So if you have any travel plans into or out of the panhandle that will take place, especially, say, Thursday afternoon into this weekend. They could be significantly impacted by this weather system that we expect to move up into there from the North Pacific and lower Gulf. Well, satellite imagery this afternoon does have a little compact low over the north central Gulf. That's what's keeping the snows and the winter weather advisory going there for the Yakutat area. And then back to the west, you can see in the enhanced clouds, St. Paul down through Unalaska and southward. That's the moisture feed with the frontal system that is slowly working its way east-northeastward across the eastern Aleutians, and it will eventually push into the lower half of the panhandle. That system, you can see on the map this afternoon, heavier rain falling in through the eastern Aleutians. There's a couple of lows, and the main one back out toward the western Aleutians, and then that low over the Gulf, and the very strong Arctic high pressure there over northwest Canada. That by more early morning on Wednesday will be rebuild back up to near 1060 millibars, so we do anticipate some bitterly cold temperatures there along areas of the Alcan border, east, southeast, interior valleys. And then just kind of a trough lingering there through the panhandle with the double barrel low and frontal system lifting through the eastern Aleutians. Another low will try to kind of pinwheel back up out of the North Pacific with a warm front, just a big surge of warm, moist air coming northward. That's the thing that's, as that front approaches the panhandle as we go through Thursday, that's what's going to trigger the heavier snows. So again, stay tuned to later forecasts, because I would imagine this time tomorrow there will be a winter storm watch issued for a good chunk of the panhandle for the pre-Christmas holiday. And temperature-wise, we are looking for lows, single digits, near zero in the northern panhandle. Temperatures 30s, 40s below, and you get into the colder Copper River basin areas as well as McGrath. And then Wednesday afternoon, temperatures teens, some 20s, outer portion of the panhandle. Warmest readings down toward Kodiak Island, south of King Salmon. You get readings still in the 30s to near 40. And then Thursday morning lows could be near 40 below, again, Copper River Basin. And at Thursday afternoon highs will still be sub-zero to the north of Anchorage and Cordova. In the interior, again, 30s, 40s below, very common, some 50s to near 60 below, Fort Yukon, Northway, Chicken. And then Wednesday afternoon, sub-zero, very cold temperatures throughout the north. And once again, Thursday morning lows could be some of the colder spots, 45 to near 60 below along the Alcan border and in through the interior valleys. And Thursday afternoon, temperatures may begin to moderate there, especially in through the west and far north. Wednesday morning, temperatures above freezing along as you go out the Alaska Peninsula into the Aleutians, and daytime highs will be warmest around say Unalaska, Dutch Harbor area, mid-40s, 45-ish. Thursday morning lows still sub-zero across the southwest interior as you go up the Yukon and Kuskokwim rivers. And then Thursday afternoon highs still near zero in those upriver locations, but getting near freezing along the Alaska Peninsula as you drop down from King Salmon, and getting up into the lower 40s as you extend out along the length of the Alaskan Peninsula and back out through the eastern Aleutians. So the temperature outlook around it just after Christmas, the 6 to 10 day outlook, December 26th through the 30th. We're going to see a shot of colder air work its way from northwest Canada along the Alcan border and just kind of ride back toward the west-southwest north of the Alaska Range and down along the Yukon River. So there's going to be a push of colder air heading toward the lower Yukon and Kuskokwim deltas, including Bethel, and areas around Norton Sound. So get ready for a shot of colder air coming in at Christmas and just after that. Temperatures will moderate, though, over the panhandle, that push of warmer, moist air associated with the storm, and then in the wake of that, the pattern would favor temperatures to average a bit above normal there in the southeast. But when you get those kind of temperatures at this point in the winter, it means more winter weather and messy things. So precipitation is likely to average above normal across the southeast interior from the Alcan border all across the panhandle, whereas areas of the far west, particularly the northwest around Norton Sound, the Seward Peninsula on up through the northwest Arctic coast, should see precipitation average a little below normal.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's now time to check your aviation forecast, and if you have a flight planned the next couple of days on Wednesday or Thursday, one of the main weather features is a very strong area of Arctic high pressure over northwest Canada, the lower Yukon, into the corner there of British Columbia. We have pressure values just above 1060 millibars, so that will affect altimeter settings. And then we have a system that's out back through the Bering, cutting across the eastern Aleutians. That frontal system will nudge east-northeastward and creep up into the Alaska Peninsula, where we do expect IFR conditions there in the eastern Aleutians Wednesday morning. And then keep in mind, as we go through this week prior to Christmas, there's going to be a major winter storm with snow and strong winds working its way northward across the Panhandle, and that'll have major weather impacts across the southeast here leading up to the Christmas holiday weekend. By Wednesday afternoon, some pockets of IFR possible along the north central Gulf Coast, especially down along the south side of the Alaska Peninsula and then back out through the central Bering from St. Paul westward. That frontal system will continue to just kind of sit across that region of the Alaska Peninsula. It's also going to be accompanied by some very strong low-level winds that will enhance the risk for even some areas of severe turbulence. And by Thursday afternoon, there could be a little IFR along the eastern Arctic coast, east of Deadhorse through Kaktovik. And then you'll notice the area of IFR conditions expanding across the lower Gulf, North Pacific interface in advance of that storm system. So again, conditions are going to really deteriorate later Thursday and into Friday across the Panhandle with that storm. Otherwise, with this large area of high pressure in place and with a ridge extending westward across the interior, Anaktuvik as well as Adigan passes will see VFR conditions. VFR will be common throughout the Alaska Range, Lake Clark and Merrill, as well as Rainy Pass eastward through Windy, Isabel, and Mentasta passes. And then as we go further south and west, Tanita Pass may see some MVFR conditions early in the day, giving way to VFR. And Portage Pass should generally hold on to MVFR conditions on Wednesday. Finally, in the north end of the Panhandle, perhaps some MVFR conditions there to start at Chilkoot and White, and then giving way to VFR conditions by Wednesday afternoon. And looking at the freezing levels, the surface freezing line runs from along the Kamchatka coastline across the central Bering south of St. Matthew and off of the Bristol Bay coastline across the northern portion of the Alaska Peninsula along the outer eastern Kenai Peninsula, along hugging the immediate Gulf Coast and then falling offshore of the Panhandle and Haida Gwaii. We do see freezing levels bump up in association with that frontal system there through the eastern Aleutians, 4,000 to just above 6,000 feet south of that area. And as we would expect, some precipitation in that region. Freezing levels relatively high there, eastern Aleutians above 8,000 feet. They fall off back to above 4,000 feet near and south of St. George and St. Paul as that frontal system will nudge its way northeastward here through the midweek. And looking at jet stream level upper winds, we have a jet core of 145 to 170 knots from the northwest along the inner southeast Panhandle, inner coastal mountains and British Columbia. And then further to the west, winds out ahead of a low pressure from the south there through the central Aleutians upwards to 130 knot jet core. At 9,000 feet, 700 millibars across west side of the state, generally an easterly flow of 40 to 60 knots, strongest winds there along the eastern Russian coast, upwards of 70 to 80 knots. And then we also have winds 60 to 75 knots there out of the southeast to south, coming in across at least the lower half of the Alaska Peninsula, and then finally bringing it down to 3,000 feet, a broad belt of winds from the lower Gulf, North Pacific interface across the Alaska Peninsula up through the northern half of the Bering. Winds within this area anywhere from 50 to 75 knots. That's going to translate to a broad area of considerable moderate turbulence along the west, southwest parts of the state, Alaska Peninsula, back in through the Aleutian chain with the potential for areas of severe turbulence, including St. Lawrence Island down south through St. Matthew and St. Paul, and the lower half of the Alaska Peninsula.
I'm a GOES-R series weather satellite orbiting 22,000 miles above Earth. I can see a lot of cool stuff from up here, and I take pictures of it with my spiffy camera that has 16 different settings. I have such good eyesight, I can see clouds, snow, smoke, smog, and ash, so I can warn you about dangerous conditions and help you avoid them. When storms are brewing, I watch them closely and help with hurricane, tornado, and flood warnings to help keep you safe. And my lightning mapper tracks lightning strikes way up in the sky, even through dark, dense clouds. I also help with search and rescue missions. I listen for distress signals from emergency beacons and tell search and rescue teams just where to find people who need help. But even when I'm keeping a close eye on Earth, I'm monitoring weather out here in space, too. I watch the sun for big bursts of energy, which send waves of radiation toward Earth that can affect power grids, block communication with planes, cause errors in GPS, and damage satellites. Space weather is also very dangerous for astronauts working outside the International Space Station. I warn them so they can get inside where they'll be safe. So the next time you watch a weather report or check your phone for the forecast, remember, that's me. So look to the sky and wave. I'll be here. Things are looking pretty bad down there. But don't worry. I'm going to give weather forecasters a heads up and help you stay safe. I'm a GOES-R series weather satellite, and one of my jobs is to keep an eye on Earth's weather as I orbit above. But I'm 22,000 miles above Earth. How does your local weather forecaster know what I see all the way up here? First, I have to figure out what's going on. I point my special camera at the Earth and take pictures of the clouds I see below. My pictures show where the clouds are, but I also take lots of other notes about the clouds. For example, how high they reach into the atmosphere, how much rain they might cause, and when a severe storm may be forming. But I can't keep all of this information to myself. I have to share it with weather forecasters down on Earth. A big antenna is waiting for my call. Since I'm a satellite, I send my pictures and notes in a computer language of ones and zeros. Luckily, the antenna speaks my language. Computers connected to the antenna organize my notes and combine all of the pictures and cloud information and translate them into weather maps. They send a version of the maps back up to me. I'll hold on to these for later. Another copy of the maps is split into smaller pieces. This helps the maps move faster from one place to another. The map pieces are then sent for processing before being sent back up in the sky to a communication satellite. From there, the maps are picked up by antennas at the National Weather Service forecast offices in each region. There are more than 100 offices. I also take the maps that I received and send them out to companies that specialize in making the maps more colorful and better for viewing on TVs and computers. The colorful maps and the maps from the forecast offices then go to your local weather forecaster. The forecaster combines the information from these maps with lots of other information, like model forecast data and radar data, to make predictions about the upcoming weather in your area. And that's how I help you find out if bad weather is going to ruin your afternoon plans. You're welcome. Soon it will be my time to shine. In outer space. I'm the GOES-R satellite. That stands for Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellite. And the R stands for my order in this series of weather satellites. Like my older siblings before me, I'll do a lot for watching weather, but I'm pretty special because I have a lot of new gadgets. I'm originally from Colorado, but my journey to space has a few stops along the way. I'll be shipped in a very special satellite shipping container to Kennedy Space Center. Moving me around is not easy. I'm over 18 feet wide and weigh 6,000 pounds. And then things get really exciting. I get loaded onto an Atlas V541 launch vehicle. A big rocket! Woo! After Atlas and I blast off together, my compartment separates from the launch vehicle and I continue to climb higher and higher. Then I break away completely and unfurl my solar panel and antenna. After that, I have to use my thrusters to get into just the right position, 22,000 miles above the ground and traveling 1.9 miles per second to keep up with Earth's rotation. And then I can officially start my job along with my fellow GOES sisters, where I take advanced pictures for more accurate weather forecasts, map lightning in real time, and improve the monitoring of the sun's activity. It's going to be so awesome! I can't wait!
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back and checking the sea ice edge. The sea ice has really expanded throughout the north along the Arctic coast, and we see the area that had open water in the lower Chukchi Sea has filled in as there has been much colder temperatures than in recent weeks, as well as areas of Kotzebue and Norton Sound ice well in place. We're also seeing the ice expand along the southwestern coast, including the YK Deltas, Bristol Bay, as well as up in especially the northern portion of Cook Inlet. Again, we've had much colder temperatures as of late and pretty cold offshore flow there off the southwest coast. Well, marine weather for Wednesday for the Panhandle. Winds will be out of the north-northeast, the upper inner channels there at 20 knots, waves around 4 feet. But as you get further south, winds turn southeasterly. Outer coast 25 knots with waves generally 9 to 11 feet. A little higher waves as you get west of Yakutat, upwards of 13 feet. And then on Thursday, there's a frontal system down there through the lower Gulf that's lifting northward. Again, still north winds 25 to 30 knots across the central and northern inner channels with waves 5 to 6 feet, but southeasterly outer gales to 35 knots, especially south of Sitka and west of Craig, where waves could run as high as 20 feet. And overall across the Gulf Coast there, we're looking for southeast to east winds, and they will tend to be increasing as that frontal system lifts further north into Thursday night and Friday. Now, across the northwestern Gulf, strongest winds on Wednesday will be in through lower Cook Inlet to the entrance of Cook Inlet and just northeast of Kodiak, 40 to 45 knot east-northeast winds. Waves 11 to as high as 14 feet in there through the entrance of Cook Inlet. And then on Thursday, look for 40 to 45 knot east to northeast winds off of the Kenai Peninsula and down through lower Cook Inlet. Waves upwards of 16 feet at the mouth of Cook Inlet, and in excess of 20 feet you get in the open waters of the Gulf. They're 20 to 26 feet. Northeast winds to 20 knots, 3-foot waves there in Prince William Sound. On Wednesday, across Kodiak Island and much of the Alaska Peninsula, east-northeast winds 40 to 45 knots, though they can be as high as 50 knots south of Sand Point. Waves there over the western Gulf and in through the North Pacific, anywhere from 15 feet off Kodiak Island to 23 feet south of Sand Point, 9 feet within Bristol Bay, and 16 feet there north of Cold Bay. On Thursday, winds increase just southeast there to 50-knot easterly winds south and southeast of Kodiak Island. Waves 25 to near 30 feet there and through the western, southwestern Gulf. 12 feet waves within the offshore areas of Bristol Bay, and upwards to 19 feet with 50-knot easterly storm force winds north of Cold Bay. The Aleutians on Wednesday, east winds there in the eastern Aleutians to 40 knots, waves 17 to 20 feet on Alaska, but they turn back around more toward the west-southwest at 15 to 20 knots west of Nikolsky and through the central Aleutians, with waves generally running 13 to 15 feet either side of the island chain. Then on Thursday, look for still easterly winds 30 to 35 knots on Alaska eastward, but winds kind of come around more to the northwest, 25 to near 30 knots there south of Atka, and waves again falling in that 13 to 15 foot range. Along the southwest coast, we have pretty strong offshore flow out of the northeast, 30 knots within Norton Sound over the ice, and 40 to 45 knots there as you get offshore of Nunavik Island, upwards to 50-knot easterly storm force winds, St. Paul, St. George, where waves in the central eastern open waters of the Bering Sea will be running 20 to 25 feet. On Thursday, still brisk northeast offshore flow along Norton Sound and the southwest coast, 40 to 50-knot winds, and waves again in excess of 20 feet around St. Matthew and St. Paul. Along the Arctic coast, winds will be generally out of the west to southwest, 25 to 30 knots, plenty of ice in place. As you get down through the lower Chukchi, the winds turn east and then northeasterly to 20 knots with ice in place. North side of St. Lawrence, 45-knot northeasterly winds with waves in open water upwards of 10-15 feet. And on Thursday, winds will tend to be more out of the northeast there along the Arctic coast, and then dropping down through the lower Chukchi, we expect northeast to north winds 20 to 25 knots, increasing to 45-knot northeasterly winds on the west side of the Seward Peninsula and the north side of Kodiak, or I should say St. Lawrence Island, with waves as high as 15 feet. Thanks for watching. That's all the time I have tonight.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.